Another week, another bunch of things to rant about. Toqger. Hikari was an asshole, but with reason. Because he doesn't trust Zalam, the shadow turned Toqger, because he's a former shadow. Now, this is actually a good thing to point out, because, you know, he betrayed the people he was working for. What are the odds that he'll betray them again in the future? And that's not an unreasonable thing to go about, except he's too extreme. He's not being suspicious, he's being, what's the phrase? I'm not exactly going to say, I don't think it fits into the normal stipulations of racism, because, you know, you're fighting the people that he used to be a part. It pretty much starts as the normal right idiocy and rebounds into conflicting cases, because they need another Toqger. They know this, and Zalam seems to want to reform. We've seen that. Except the evidence given isn't enough for blind faith, and Right is spouting that, and of course he turns out right because of situations when normally he would not be. See, this is my thing with the show. It's showing these things in the exact wrong way. You shouldn't take someone at face value, but you know more than face value about the guy. And Hikari's going too far the other way with suspicion without means. And later in the episode, when Zalam is forcefully reverted to a shadow by Zet, by Zet's actions, Hikari takes that as Zalam's own actions instead of it being forced upon him, which makes him more out to be an ass in its entirety than it's the show justifying that Right was correct all along when they didn't need to. He is the worst character because the show is trying to show us that he will be right even when he shouldn't be. I'm not phrasing this correctly, but that's more of it. That his actions... If this was the real world, his actions, his attitudes would get people killed. And that does not make a good character. Anyways, Zed hears that Zalam has managed to free himself from the curse of being a shadow through the light, and since Zed's whole obsession is the light accepting him, he wants to know how he did it. So when Zalam passes through one of the Shadowline areas, specifically one who... the monster of the week is Ring Shadow, and he creates people's headaches by using the keyword of their name. And really, this first encounter should have tipped Hikari off that his extremeness was probably unwarranted, because they already saw from this that Zalam had rejected everything about being a shadow, even his own name, simply from this encounter, except he's blinded by his own prejudice. Effectively, what I'm saying is, they're both in the wrong, but Right is wrong for the wrong reasons. Right is wrong for the right reasons. Hikari is wrong because he's not taking this objectively. Anyways, yeah, Zed appears, tries to talk to Zalam, doesn't work, reverts him to Shadow, which then actually hurts him, because, you know, forced upon him, I'm trying to emphasize that, and takes Right as a hostage to get him, and Hikari confronts him and says that now he won't be offensive to him, but he won't trust him, which I guess is character motivation, because he says the entire reason he was like that was to get Right to think more. if you really want to do that, you would sit him down and go over everything that he's done wrong since he became a Toqger that they can remember, which is pretty much every situation they've ever been in. So, Hikari is right, wrong reasons. Right, wrong. I'm dwelling on this because I don't know how to phrase it properly. So yeah, they go and confront Zed over this, and they concoct a plan. It doesn't exactly work right, but initially, because Zed wants to know what turned Zalam away from the Shadow Forces, and that's when Hikari comes in with the Rainbow Rush, you know, the bazooka that shoots an energy blast that transformed into something else that destroys a shadow. They fire it at Zalam and turn it into a rainbow. This destroys the essence of the shadow within him that Zed brought back and returns him to being, I guess, a new person, because they renamed him Nijino Akira, which I believe translates to some type of rainbow, which I think is awakening the hope within him, or something, because now he's Toku 6. Zed, when this happens, sees the rainbow and sees Zalam's transformation and wonders why that couldn't be him, and in fact faints slightly as the light that he sees from the darkness kind of surges and collapses. And I think it's because he's the Emperor of Darkness. I think it's because he is the root, and his malevolence goes down to his very soul. So, foreshadowing, I should effectively say. Though Akira, as he's now branded, is still looking for that place to die, and yeah, the way he fights is rather stupid. Very, very, very stupid. He does give them a new Resha, though, the Drill Resha, which was previously a Curliner, the Shadowline trains. I'm not exactly sure how that works. We'll probably be able to tell at some point in the future. And of course, then he does the cliche 6th Ranger Lone Wolf thing, which will probably last another 2-3 episodes if the running chain is any. Gaim. I'm having trouble verbalizing my thoughts on this episode, because it's more of the Kota versus Michi arc. In fact, it's the culmination of the entire event, because Kota still does not believe that Michi is trying to kill him. They even have a scene specifically about this where Yoko and Kaito try to tip him off to it, and he doesn't believe it. I think that's because they never saw his he never saw Michi's duplicitous maliciousness. Hell, Kaito and Yoko wouldn't have caught on to it unless they had seen, respectively, him shooting Kota and him just standing by as Takatora was killed. So they know how deep the rabbit hole goes, whereas Kota has always gotten reassurance from Michi about his actions, in that he was doing it for their own good, and not for, Michi's selfish view of the world. It's mine! It will all belong to me! You shall live if you worship me! Kind of god complex. Takatora's back on Earth, thanks to Roshuo, and Reiryu's working to harvest the life energy of pretty much every human he can get his hands on. And there's this dichotomy I've been bringing up in, that's appeared in other Gen Urobuchi works, in the nature of how you go about saving people. Do you sacrifice one to save many, or do you only focus on those within your reach? And it's a dichotomous thing because people will be hurt either way. Kota strives for the save everyone you can, even though it hurts you, the Kamen Rider method, in that fewer people will be lost if you try to save everyone. Well, Michi's approach has been, screw everyone, I'll do only those that are important to me, and has repeatedly not jumped in during the attacks. He does as little as possible. I remember this one moment right after the beat writers started to be blamed for the Invest attacks, where Michi's holding Kota back from helping someone that's just being attacked at random, whereas Kota's just striving to go up to tug free and save him from it, and the battle was over in seconds, and Michi didn't even consider doing it at all, because it would have hurt his interests alone. And that fridge logic, that foreshadowing continues to be why I think Gaim is probably the best written Heisei show. Okay, not all Heisei shows, but Heisei Kamen Rider show. And I'm not alone in that belief. And I guess it's showing how evil it can be when your good intentions hurt more than they help. And pretty much they're not good intentions anymore. He's lying to himself at this point about it, because no one believes him. He tries to save Rika and Rat, two former Gaim members. Actually, there's this comic floating around Tumblr where instead of Rika and Rat from the show, it's Rika Nonaka and Rap Trap from Digimon Tamers and Transformers Beast Wars respectively, and it's hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. And at least to me. And it's pretty much the same reaction they had to Michi's proposal in getting them out of the life force draining machines to selectively cull the herd, because Michi's taken over Project Arc, except Project Arc from Yggdrasil was a worst case scenario in the event that they could not contain the Helheim Forest. Now, that's pretty much dead since Red U took over Yggdrasil Tower, the scalar system was destroyed, and Ryoma bugged out. Pretty much all of that started happening because of the Takatora betrayal. Because Michi gave Redyu the next path. Redyu was interested in conquering his own thing using Rosho's own obsession against him. He didn't have the path to getting it until Michi pretty much handed it to him. In exchange for, running the new world that Redyu would be taking over. He's pretty much enabled this to happen. Granted, it can be extrapolated that Redyu was responsible for most of the random crack openings for the Invest to be scouting, but it's iffy. Especially since, the major assaults have all been coming from him. And now we have this conflict where Rosho is blind to how it came about. He's seeing Earth that's already doomed because of Redyu's actions, not realizing that if they stop Redyu, then even if he gets his queen back, then nothing's going to come of it, and he doesn't need to... What he does this episode is he forces open more cracks, much like Redyu has done, and spreads them all over the world, pretty much speeding up the takeover of Helheim. When that was the exact opposite of what they were trying to do. So, that's pretty much the problem I'm seeing with the overlords, the Fiminchu. They're all consumed by their obsessions. Rosho and his wife, Demushu in fighting Redyu, and dominance. I'm wondering what the Queen is like when if she's revived when they hear of all this. Anyways, Takatora, as I said, is trying to get in contact with Kota to make sure he's not being abused by Ryoma's methodology that's to him is probably screwing everyone over now. And, well, let's just say between Yoko and Michi as the obvious betrayers, then he doesn't get a chance. Problem with Kota, another thing Kota's been noticing is even without wearing the belt, he hasn't needed to eat at all. I'm thinking this is a side effect of the Kiwami Lock Seed, activating the power of Kiwami arms, because part of Sagara's thing was turning him into an overlord to be the next king of Helheim. I really do think he is the forest incarnate, and he's chosen his leader because it's the most entertaining. Because that would hold with his overarching themes. Now, he's pretty much been absent since he gave the Kiwami Lock Seed up to Kota, but I know he's going to be back. I know he has to be the final villain, because that's how this works with Gen Urobuchi. But this culminates with Michi finally revealing himself to Kota because Mai rejects him. Because he still thinks Kota is the cause of everything that has gone wrong in his life. From Mai rejecting him and slapping him, to people abandoning him, to Takatora praising Kota over Michi's actions when Michi was just acting like a follower. He wasn't distinguishing himself in any relevant way. He wasn't interacting with them. He was sequestering himself off and wondering, why don't they like me? And I think what broke him this time is Mai rejecting him not for Kota, but because of an ideal, and he still doesn't see that it's just because Mai's a different person than what he can use, and not transplanting, reinterpreting. He's tied himself into all of these knots with his own delusions and perceptions of reality, that he really does believe that if he kills Kota, everything will go his way. And so he reveals himself as Shin Zangetsu. I am glad this finally happened. I just wish that it was framed better, because, well, it seemed like Kota ignoring reality when Kaito and Yoko confronted him on it at the beginning. And like I said, that's because Michi's that good at keeping his betrayal unnoticed, but after it's revealed, you kind of connect all the dots together, and I think Kota had this moment himself now. At least I really, really hope so, because this would be a very bad thing to keep as a running thing through the rest of the show. In fact, most people want Michi dead. In fact, the actor wants Michi dead. Wants Michi to not be redeemed from this after everything. So, and if it's the actor who doesn't want it. Fortunately, Takatora is there to witness all of this, to witness how duplicitous Michi is. He had his own, suspicions about it after he wasn't helped out against Ryoma, but I think this is the wake-up call for both of them. Takatora, because he's been so busy to not see it. Takatora's kind of infamous now for not seeing things that are kind of obvious, but, you know, when you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, you're gonna miss some things if they're not made available to you for evidence, and this has kind of been that thing. And fortunately, we'll finally be getting the closure, hopefully, to that, because Zangetsu's coming back. The original Zangetsu, the melon arms, that Takatoru is going to get from somewhere. I really hope he had the belt at home, or something. Garo. Yeah, this is another difficult one to state. Pretty much, it finally gets us back to Kuro. Kuro has not been seen much throughout the series for annoying reasons, and today is a sword purifying day, and which Raiga and Mayuri are offered to come along with. Good thing too, because the purifying ritual for his branch of the Makai Knights involves stabbing a benign, but it's a beast from the Makai realm that actually eats and absorbs horror energy. So by stabbing their blades in, the monster eats the horrors that are sealed within, purifying the blades. Now, it's a problem because they're pretty much torturing this beast to feed it. And of course, when you injure a wild animal, it's going to turn violent. And so it escapes, and most of the episode is tracking it down and putting it down, because that's the merciful thing after it's gone that rampant. And this kind of ties back to Mayuri's subplot, because to her, and in reality, they are kind of the same, created to be tools for the Makai Knights and then just thrown away when they're no longer seen as useful. In fact, it's something Raiga has been trying to work with her on, to treat her as a human, to not make her, to change her perception of reality. And it's kind of tying more into what will happen when all of the slab and flower Makai are sealed, because I think what they did is they're turning it into an incarnation with which they can destroy. She absorbs all of these Makai so they can lock it down and actually destroy it. Or take it into seal it into, I'm looping myself. We'll have to wait to actually see if that happens, because the series isn't just over half done, and they've sealed like 4 slab monsters, less than half of them. So hopefully we'll be getting back to that plot soon, but Mayuri has a few good moments with the beast in that it's actually rather gentle. In fact, to the point, I'm wondering why they never tried to tame these creatures for use as, like, hunt dogs for Makai Knights, because this would be an easy way to, make it so that they can seal the monsters, the horrors, into something edible for them, and then, treat them like pets. Turn them into the guard dogs of the Makai Knights. Yeah, that's the phrase I wanted to use. Instead, they're just abusing it, which shows how twisted the Makai Knights have become in this endless crusade to save humanity from the unending numbers of horrors. There's a bit of conflict with the other knights and Zero and Raiga, because of apparently the beasts can't be destroyed with a common Makai blade, because due to how they purify them, and killing it would just release all of the horrors that they have put into it, which, considering how many it takes before you need to purify a blade, that's a hell of a lot. Eventually they do it with some type of Makai magic that involves the moon that I really don't get, but if it was that easy to purify that many horrors at once, it wonders why they didn't just do that on their swords instead of abusing a wild animal. Although it's I think it's stepped back in Mayuri's character development as she sees the same thing as eventually going to happen to her. Yeah. So pretty much, Toqger's still stupid. Gaim had some flaws in the storyline that really should have been remedied before. And Garo's finally feeling like they're moving the plot forward. Finally like they're moving the plot forward a bit. Hopefully we'll have a story arc episode soon to get to the next slab piece and whatever happened to the flower of the Makai, because it really hasn't been seen at all. I would have expected, due to the time before it blooms, they would have been more on this, but I guess not. We've been having filler episodes for a hell of a lot of the show. I'm starting to get burned out on that. Looking forward to next week's in the battles, though.